Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, Wiki Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Got another great show today here on this Tuesday. Got to adjust my mic a little bit. Okay, great show, guys. We're going to be talking about YouTube censorship. Huh, interesting. A good example of that happening on the left. Fascinating. Then we'll be talking about Sean Hannity and his and how much of a welfare queen he is. It's going to be great. I think you'll enjoy that story. / get angry. Then we're going to have some rare good news. Progressive messaging is working. We're going to have an example of that. Then, of course, we have Democrats, corporate Democrats up to being corporate Democrats, of course. We'll talk about that story. We'll give some major credit here to somebody who helped expose the Flint water crisis. So that's good news, recognizing a heroic person for doing something wonderful. And then Joanne Reed. You're going to love that story. Joanne Reed in a little bit of trouble again. Surprise, surprise. For homophobic posts. We'll talk about that. All right. If you haven't already, please give us a share and a like on YouTube, Facebook. We stream on both, so if you could do that, that would be awesome. Also, please use the super chat. That really, really helps the show. And we need all the help that we can get with demonetization, deranking, and all the terrible things going on at YouTube that have basically cut my numbers in half. So, yeah, it's been rough. It's been rough. So anyway, we'll get to those stories. Actually, you know, we'll start right now. Let's dive into it. All right. So we got a story from YouTube. So recently, YouTube has made a lot of questionable decisions as of late in order to appease advertising companies that have pulled out or have limited their ad buys since the adpocalypse last year. Look, by the way, adpocalypse is not over. It's still going, and it's arguably the worst that it's ever been. Because, look, these articles keep coming out and keep scaring off advertisers, which, of course, makes YouTube overreact. Now, some of the recent algorithm changes, by the way, have decimated smaller channels like mine. So, again, I've seen a massive drop in views and a corresponding drop in revenue, and even subscriber growth has been greatly reduced. So, look, man, we're having some issues. Now, in their latest bad decision, YouTube has decided that it would go into the realm of censorship. Now, this story is related to Alex Jones. Now, Alex Jones is an enormous channel. It's got millions of subscribers, millions of views. And it's because he puts out conspiracy garbage. Now, the videos that were taken down were not actually posted by Alex Jones. So, now this is interesting, right? The videos that were taken down because they exposed Alex Jones in his Sandy Hook conspiracy. Now, look, he's been attacking victims of gun violence for a long time, calling Parkland students crisis actors, going after, as I said, the victims of Sandy Hook, their families, saying, oh, that kid didn't even exist, didn't he? A false flag to come take your guns. What a bunch of ridiculous bullshit. So, nonetheless, he puts up those videos, and then another company decides, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to take those videos, we're going to put them together, and we're going to expose Alex Jones for what he's saying. Now, this is relevant because Alex Jones is being sued by the families of Sandy Hook. Now, I'm going to go to The Guardian here and tell you what company is in trouble. Media Matters, a left-wing watchdog, last week posted a series of clips of Alex Jones spreading falsehoods about the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre. A newsworthy video of evidence after the victims' families filed a defamation lawsuit against the InfoWars host. But YouTube, for reasons it has yet to explain, removed the video 3 days after it was published. A move that once again benefited Alex Jones, who is now arguing that this defamation suit has defamed him. Oh, look at that. The left wing, they're just trying to defame me. Those Sandy Hook parents, who, by the way, their kids were never real. They're just trying to defame me. So wait. Here's the thing, right? So, again, Jones puts out this propaganda. Is he censored? Not in the least, right? And look, I don't think he should be censored. I think his ridiculous antics, I think it's an act. I think he's grifting people. But at the same time, if you go after one, you go after everyone. That's how it works. They're not going to stop with Alex Jones when it comes to taking down videos. Then they're going to start going after other channels. They're already going after Jimmy Dore and trying to demonetize him. So once you start with one, once you start down that road, it gets worse. And, of course, Alex Jones is a likely target because he is a grifter and he spreads and peddles conspiracy theories, which gives him millions of views. And for some reason, the YouTube algorithm seems to put those conspiracy theorist videos at the top. Weird how that works out. Now, again, I despise Alex Jones. I don't agree with him at all, whatsoever. But again, I don't think that he should be censored. I don't think his videos should be taken down. I also don't think that Media Matters videos should be taken down as well. And again, that's what happened simply for exposing Alex Jones and showing people what he actually said. Now, look, there's a lot of blame on the algorithm, right? But in this case, it actually wasn't the algorithm's fault. According to Angelo Carusone, the president of Media Matters, he said, there was an actual news component to this. And he said that, look, this was even being shared by Parkland students. So it was out there, right? This was news, and yet it was censored. Again, super weird. Now, YouTube told Media Matters that the video had been flagged for review and that the company itself had determined that the video violated harassment and bullying policies. Media Matters also received a strike, which is a penalty, of course, that if you get 3 strikes, your channel is gone, deleted. And all the work and all the videos and everything that you put into it, gone. You never want to get a strike. And yet, that's exactly what happened. So, here's the thing, right? So, did the original videos where this had come from, did they get a strike? No, of course not. These videos, again, to the best of my knowledge, still exist, are still up. And Alex Jones is still saying, oh, yeah, no, Sandy Hook, Parkland, all crisis actors, fake news. In the video that was exposing it, that's the one that gets taken down. That they're somehow doing harassment and bullying. I can't wrap my mind around it. Now, after the Media Matters wrote about that censorship and The Guardian had inquired about it, YouTube, facing a lot of backlash, said, oh, no, I got to put the video back up. Reinstate the video. In fact, the spokesperson said in the email, with the massive volume of videos on our site, sometimes we make the wrong call. When it's brought to our attention that a video or channel has been removed mistakenly, we act quickly to reinstate it. Likely story. Now look, okay, they fixed that this time, fine, but what's going to happen the next time? What happens if you have a small channel and you don't have the reach that, for example, Media Matters has? Well, then you're SOL. That's the problem. That's the problem with censorship, it always hits the smaller people much more aggressively than it hits people with more subscribers or people that have a bigger name. Now, The Guardian raised an interesting question in this article as well. They said that the incident has served as a reminder that tech companies like Google and Facebook have, in the face of pressure from conservatives, worked to show that they are unbiased. Carasone said that, and he added, they're extraordinarily sensitive to their right-wing critics. So the question is, are they biased towards the right wing? I think so. I believe so. Look, you have a lot of right-wing YouTubers, right? Big right-wing presence on YouTube, and every one of them is like, oh my God, they are specifically targeting conservative channels and demonetizing us. They're deranking us. They're coming after us. It must be left-wing censorship. But wait a minute. We're in the same boat. In fact, all the major progressive outlets, Kyle Kulinski, Secular Talk, Mike Figueredo at the Humanist Report, the Young Turks, myself, Jimmy Dore, we've all been attacked. We've all been deranked, demonetized. It's not just the right wing. It's all of us. It's all independent media on YouTube. Why? It's because there's money in old media. Old media is a competitor to YouTube. And so if they take the shittiest people on YouTube, which, again, one of them is Alex Jones, and use him as an example and say, oh, look at this horrible stuff. Your ads might have appeared on this. Really? So, look, and they use that, as I said before, as a way to scare off advertisers. Hey, 0.1% of your of your ads might have appeared on a hateful channel seen by like 2 people. You better pull your ads. You better pull your ads. You know what's safe? You know what's brand safe? Old media, CNN, MSNBC. Come back home. Come back home to old media. Forget about this digital stuff. They're all a bunch of conspiracy mongers anyway. So no, come back home. Take your money and bring it back. Look, on the right-wing channels, of course, look, they cry and they cry and they cry about being victims, right? Yet, of course, they can get away with being absolutely vicious. Now, when somebody calls them out, well, they get punished. It's not the right wing that gets punished. It's usually the left. And this is a great example of that. So that's absolutely irritating. But look, most of us on the progressive side, we're getting punished for the misdeeds of others, right? And that's not right either. But again, YouTube is just, I'm sorry, not YouTube, but old media is using this as a way to get a leg up on their competitors. And unfortunately, a lot of us on YouTube are pawns in this game of corporation versus corporation, and corporate dominance. So we're getting demonetized. Companies like Media Matters are getting copyrights, or not copyright strikes, but abuse and bullying strikes and videos removed. How far is it going to go? YouTube is going to keep overreacting because, look, they're a corporation. They want to keep their advertisers, right? And unfortunately, in the pursuit of that, small channels are going to get suppressed in search results, things like that, while bigger channels, unfortunately, like Logan Paul and Alex Jones, they see very little consequences. Not saying that Alex Jones should be banned, not saying you should be censored, but there's got to be something. The situation is incredibly messed up here on YouTube, and unfortunately, I don't see it getting any better. Okay. All right. Let's move on here. But first, before I do, I want to read a super chat here. Kimberly Buckley asks, where and who do I send my strongly worded letter to at YouTube to voice my opposition to censorship? I wish I knew. Look, man, I don't have connections at YouTube. I don't know anybody at YouTube. And I don't know who to contact for that kind of stuff. So that's unfortunate. And I think until there's such a gigantic public outrage and outrage from a lot of creators, and look, we've got Philip DeFranco, who is threatening to leave the platform, but I think there needs to be more for YouTube to change that algorithm and figure out what they're going to do about censorship. In a way, they're kind of stuck in the middle because, again, they need their advertisers, right? And they also have to balance that with the needs of creators. So it's an unenviable position that I would not want to find myself in the middle of. So, but to answer your question, I have no idea. And that sucks. Okay, but thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. That's pretty much the only way right now, other than Patreon, that I can actually count on continuing to do the show, with it being so bad as it is. Okay. Let's move on here. Okay. Next story. So Sean Hannity has been in a little bit of trouble ever since it was revealed, or he was revealed to be a client of Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, of course, has been raided by the FBI, and it's possible that he might face some serious charges in the future. Now, Hannity, of course, denied being this client. In fact, he said he preferred real estate and that he doesn't deal with the stock market at all and had occasionally consulted with Cohen on real estate matters. Okay, and that's actually important when you factor into the story. Now, thanks to public records reviewed by The Guardian, we now know a lot more about the scale of Hannity's investments in real estate. And it turns out they reveal him to be a massive hypocrite. Now, first, the records link Hannity to a group of shell companies that spent at least $90 million on more than 870 homes in 7 states over the past decade. Now, these properties range from mansions to rentals for low-income families. Now, could you imagine living in a home owned by Sean Hannity? Disaster. I would not want to live there. But anyway, and you know what's weird is that thanks to the way that these are set up with the shell companies, you'd never know that Hannity was the owner. Now, again, super gross, right? Now, what's even more gross is how he acquired these properties. Now, according to the article, dozens of properties were bought at a discount back in 2013 after the banks had foreclosed on their previous owners for defaulting on mortgages. So, Hannity, his company, shell companies, came in and they swooped up all these homes that were foreclosed on. Now, that's funny because during that time, he was going after Obama for a high foreclosure rate. In fact, he was spreading falsehoods about how high the foreclosure rate really was. Now, look, if you want to criticize Obama for most of the gains, for example, going to the rich during his administration and income inequality, that's absolutely fine. That's legit. But if you want to make up numbers, like Hannity saying, foreclosures are up 51%. That's ridiculous. It's nowhere even near that high. Still a problem, but come on, dude. Don't make shit up. But anyway, so don't make shit up and then go and profit off the foreclosure rate. And that's even worse. Now, he said, quote, that there were millions more Americans suffering under this president, partly because of the foreclosures. Well, he's right, but while he's saying that, he's going and personally making profit off of these foreclosed homes. There's a word for that. It's called exploitation. Hannity is a vulture. He's making money off of people's suffering. But it gets worse. Hannity also amassed part of his property collection with support from the American taxpayer through the U.S. Department for Housing and Urban Development, that is HUD. Now, on that, the details are damning. According to The Guardian, among the most valuable are two large apartment complexes in Georgia that Hannity bought in 2014 for $22.7 million. These developments are in the cities of Perry and Brunswick, which have higher poverty rates and lower median incomes than the U.S. average. 1- and 2-bedroom units in Hannity's apartment complexes are available for rent for $735 to $1,065 per month, according to brochures. The Georgia purchases were funded with mortgages for $17.9 million that Hannity obtained with help from HUD, which ensured the loans under a program created as part of the National Housing Act. The loans, first guaranteed under the Obama administration, were recently increased by $5 million with renewed support from Ben Carson's department. So understand, he trashes Obama, he trashes public housing programs and loans like this, while also taking loans from Housing and Urban Development under a program instituted by President Obama. And not only that, but he actually got an increase thanks to Ben Carson. Now, he didn't disclose any of this when he interviewed Carson on his show and praised him for his work at HUD. Amazing. More details. Late last month, Hannity's mortgages were replaced with loans for $22.9 million and were rewritten with Carson's HUD and a new bank. There was no indication that Carson was personally involved in the process. Carson, however, does have the authority to allow Hannity from 2019 to convert the rental complexes into condos for sale, which could be lucrative for a television host. Gee, I wonder why he praised Carson's work when he was last on the program. Very interesting. I mean, couldn't have anything to do with all that money, right? I think we all know the answer. Look, this is corruption. Absolute corruption. Look, why should public money from HUD be used to support somebody who makes roughly $30 million a year? No, it should be going to low-income families to be able to have them afford homes. But look, grifter's going to grift, right? And Sean Hannity is running an enormous scam. This is the guy who, again, rails against public housing. But Hannity, you claim to stand up for the little guy, for the forgotten men and women? No. You're nothing more than a disgusting vulture. If you loved privatization as much as you claim to have done, then you would have funded those buildings from your own pocket instead of getting giant loans from your friend over at Housing and Urban Development. You want to talk about people taking advantage of the system? You're taking advantage of the system. You're a hypocrite and a liar. Fuck Sean Hannity. It's a goddamn welfare queen. Okay. All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll have Kamala Harris, and then car loans, and then we'll get to, of course, the rest of the stories. So stick around. We'll be right back. We'll take a break, and stay right here. We'll be back. everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share if you haven't already. Helps out the show. I want to give another shout out for somebody using the super chat. That's Flatapine. Thank you so much for going to support the show. Again, that's a really good way to support the show. So I definitely encourage the use. So, all right, let's go to the next story. It involves Kamala Harris. Let's change that. Okay. Progressives are starting to win. Now, this is a story, bit of an update on a story to something we did a couple of weeks ago about corporate PAC money. Now, according to the Daily Beast, Kamala Harris, who earlier had refused to stop taking corporate and PAC money, has finally gotten with the times and said, okay. I'm not going to take corporate PAC money anymore. In fact, she made the comments during an interview with the New York radio show, The Breakfast Club. Fascinating. Now, she said, I did a town hall a couple of weeks ago in California, and I was asked that question. And I wasn't expecting the question, and I thought about it afterwards. And I'm going to tell you, Charlemagne, because that's the host, Charlemagne the God. I have questions about his divinity, but nonetheless. She says, I actually think that money has had such an outside influence on politics, and especially with the Supreme Court, it determining Citizens United, which basically means that big corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money influencing a campaign, right? We're all supposed to have an equal vote. But money has now really tipped the balance between an individual having equal power in an election to a corporation. And she's basically read about all that. So she says, I've actually made a decision since I had that conversation that I'm not going to allow corporate PAC checks. And to that I say, wonderful. Great. Now, look, that's interesting because I remember covering that town hall and I remember criticizing Kamala Harris for her reaction in that. In fact, I want to show you that video right now.
If a corporation or a corporate lobbyist wants to give you money for a campaign, will you tell them thanks but no thanks?
Well, it depends. It depends. I mean,
wrong answer.
Well, that's not the answer you want to hear. It doesn't make it wrong.
Okay. So, yeah, the room's about split, I think, on that. Some are like, oh, yes. Oh, great. Yeah, wrong. Her answer was fantastic. It's just not the answer that you wanted to hear. Well, apparently, he was right in the first place. She was wrong. And then she came back and she actually realized that. I guess something had changed in the last couple of weeks that made her reconsider. Maybe it's perhaps because she looked at a poll. Yeah, most Americans despise our system of money in politics. Turns out that if she actually has, wants a chance to win, then she's going to have to stop taking corporate PAC money and start relying on regular donors, which, of course, that's exactly what we want our politicians to do, to stop taking corporate money. Now, look, you guys know me. I'm a skeptical motherfucker, right? I know that she probably doesn't mean it, right? I know she's like, oh, no, I'm looking at the polls here, and I'm looking at this, and I can raise a little bit of money from regular people. Yeah, I guess this is good for my election, right? Yeah, I know that. Despite the motivation, if she actually does it and stops taking corporate PAC money and stops taking money from gigantic corporations, that's a good thing. That is a positive step. And you know what? It shows you that progressives are winning in the message. Because, look, who started doing this? The most progressive senator in Congress, Bernie Sanders. He said, you know what? I'm not going to take corporate PAC money. I don't think anybody should. And then there are groups of other people who are running for Congress running primaries saying, yes, I'm not going to take corporate PAC money. That's the entire point of Justice Democrats, for example. They say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to take big corporate money. Well, that idea is spreading because guess what? It turns out that it's incredibly popular with the American people to know that their politicians are not bought out by shady corporations and big money. But so, look, we are winning because here we have mainstream corporate Democrats like Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and others being pushed to the left on this issue. Now, of course, there's a ton more to do, and there's a ton more that they can do. It's not like this one move is going to earn our trust. You know, it's not like, oh no, Ol is forgiven. No, Ol is not forgiven. We still know, in the case of Kamala Harris, of course, where she had helped out Steven Mnuchin by failing to prosecute One West Bank for all their foreclosures. We know that. Nonetheless, this goes to show you that pressure from the left actually does work. We are having an impact. And it all started with Bernie Sanders, with Elizabeth Warren, and again, now we have Harris, Booker, and Gillibrand. And you know what that means? We're winning. We're winning on the message. Now, we got to keep pushing them forward. We got to push them to get the money out of politics. And if they still think that Citizens United and all those other disastrous court decisions that have made the influence of money in politics as strong as it is today, if they're okay with that system and okay with taking checks from corporate donors, then we're going to primary them. We're going to primary them and we're going to beat them. You know why? It's because we have the people on our side. And the people despise the corruption. And we got to fight the corruption. So, look, if we keep up this pressure and we keep up the primaries from the left, and we keep hammering the message home that no more corporate PAC money, no more corporate influence for our politicians, then they will have no choice but to help us get rid of money in politics. And that's a good thing. Okay. So we go from Democrats doing good things to Democrats doing terrible things. Okay. Some congressional Democrats have decided to join with the Republicans in supporting legislation that would strip the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau of its power to bring cases against giant banks. For example, Wells Fargo, which was recently in the news for being fined $1 billion. Let me go and detail or get into the details of why they face such a fine. Now, according to the Huffington Post, Wells Fargo had forcibly placed duplicative or unnecessary insurance on hundreds of thousands of vehicles owned by customers who had taken out a car loan with the bank. So, look, they get their own insurance, and then this company, this bank, basically adds insurance on top of it. I wonder who that benefited. Now, this not only resulted in typical charges of over $1,000, to which these customers had never agreed. Now think about that. You and your family, look at your financial situation. You think you could afford another extra $1,000 in charges on top of what you're already paying? No, most people don't even have an extra $1,000 sitting around for an emergency. Most people don't even have $500 sitting around for an emergency. So just imagine all these extra charges. Now, for at least 27,000 customers, this had happened to, and the Bureau wrote that the additional cost of the force-placed insurance could have contributed to a default that resulted in the repossession of their car. So, as I mentioned before, most people couldn't afford that, and guess what? They ended up getting their car repossessed. Not having a car makes it very difficult to hold down a job, which makes it very difficult to pay the bills, which makes it very difficult to find another job. So it ends up being this cycle of debt that I'm very familiar with. Now, this entire situation, we have a word for that. It's called theft. Basically, the bank lied to you, added on charges, and then took your money. And then, if that's not bad enough, insult to injury, they then took your car. Man. And of course, they did get punished for it, but it was basically nothing more than a slap on the wrist, really. Oh, $1 billion fine, right? Wells Fargo made somewhere around over $20 billion this year in profit. They're going to be okay. Again, this is nothing more than just the cost of doing business. Barely a scratch when it comes to their bottom line. So make no mistake, right? They went easy on them. Now, Republicans and Democrats are getting together to go even easier on these kinds of banks. Now, in fact, they're doing so by trying to push a bill that would deny the CFPB jurisdiction over companies that are subject to state insurance regulation that also engage in, quote, offering or providing a consumer financial product or service. Well, Wells Fargo would be one of those because they're a bank and they also offer insurance. So they would be exempt over CFPB regulation. Now, for such firms, which include essentially every major bank, the Bureau would lose its authority to the extent that such company is engaged in the business of insurance. State insurance regulators would have a much weaker record of consumer protection enforcement, would replace the CFPB. So this would basically say to the state regulators, here, that's your job now. And state regulators, they don't do much regulation. Now, the legislation was authored by a Republican out of Wisconsin named Sean Duffy. Now, Sean Duffy is a huge friend of the banks. It was also backed by Representative Gwen Moore, that's a Democrat from Wisconsin, Senator Tammy Baldwin, also another Democrat from Wisconsin, along with other 6 conservative House Democrats, and Joe Manchin. So I make a special note for him because, again, he is incredibly friendly to the banks and incredibly friendly to large multinational corporations. Big surprise. Not really. That's why we call him a corporate Democrat. So make no mistake that this bill, which is now bipartisan, would basically end the authority of the CFPB on these banks. Now, look, under Mulvaney, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has essentially been gutted anyway. They're not going to take any new enforcement action. And look, that's because Mulvaney wants it that way. So go after payday lenders? Pff, no, of course not. Go after big banks? Hell no. The only thing that they did is that they went after Wells Fargo. But, as I said before, this is a slap on the wrist. So, nice job. Now, Duffy, as I said before, is a huge friend of the banks, along with Mick Mulvaney. And which, by the way, Mulvaney, before he got the top spot at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, he had called the Bureau a sick-sad joke. Well, look, in my opinion, allowing a bank to basically charge you things without your permission, among with so many other things that Wells Fargo has actually been found to have been guilty of doing, and then using those fees to essentially steal your car, is both sick and sad. The joke, of course, is the politicians who claim to be on our side but support legislation like this, especially the Democrats. Look, the reason that we beat up on Democrats so much here on independent media, on the Jimmy Dore Show, here around the nation, and a lot of the other left-wing channels, it's not because we favor Republicans. No, we expect Republicans to do this. That's par for the course. The whole point of the Republican Party is to serve the banks and corporate interests. That's the whole reason for their fucking existence. But Democrats, we expected a little bit more from them. We expected not for them to not roll over for the banks and large corporations. And that, of course, is the joke. That they are actually on your side. Look, man, Joe Manchin and Gwen Moore, they've never met a piece of bank deregulation that they didn't like. And, of course, they get away with it because, mainstream Democrats are like, well, but we need a conservative to win in West Virginia. No, you don't. It turns out Republicans also hate corruption. And if Bernie's visits to West Virginia showed you anything, it's that a progressive message does resonate. And not only that, but the campaign of Paula Jean Swearengin. That also shows you how a progressive message can resonate with West Virginia. So, I don't know, maybe they should run somebody with a message of, hey, we won't let the banks rip you off. Oh, wait, they actually have in West Virginia, and she's doing awesome. But what a concept, right? And it just proves the corporate Democratic narrative. I can't wait for Paula Jean to rip Manchin's face off in the primaries. That's going to be awesome. But anyway, now, look, Tammy Baldwin. Huffington Post reached out to Manchin and Moore and got no response. However, they did get a response from Tammy Baldwin. In fact, her staffer said, quote, no, not quote. Hold on, let me get to the quote here. But basically she says, this doesn't help the banks at all. Quote, that legislation does not strip or change the agency's authority to enforce compliance when an insurer offers CFPB-covered products. The bill simply clarifies that the CFPB's role is to enforce consumer protection laws and also reinforce existing laws on state-based regulation of insurance by state insurance offices and commissioners. The CFPB retains the oversight authority being used in its enforcement action against Wells Fargo, which Senator Baldwin has strongly supported. Well, that's a pretty poor explanation, actually, because it turns out that the language in this bill happens to be very broad and very expansive, and it has the potential to undermine enforcement against a vast array of abuses perpetrated by financial conglomerates. Now, Birnbaum, executive director for the Center of Economic Justice, called this bill outrageous. He said, with the exception of a few states, the record of state regulators on this is terrible. Wells Fargo force-placed some 800,000 policies erroneously. No insurance regulator caught that. It only took the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to catch Wells Fargo doing all these violations and to actually recoup some of the money that regular people had lost. In fact, since its creation, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has given back $12 billion of money stolen by financial institutions and other companies back to the American people. So, look, this language is vague. This language will allow for a lot of these companies to no longer be regulated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And it would allow court challenges if the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau were to act against some of these insurance providers. That's the truth of what's going on. It also includes a provision stating that, quote, when in doubt, the enforcement of this title should be broadly construed in favor of the authority of a state insurance regulator over the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which, by the way, means that the state regulators who have missed all these things, who have done almost nothing for their constituents in trying to punish these big banks, well, it means that they're going to have control over this. Which means that nothing is going to happen to banks that defraud people in the ways that Wells Fargo has. Do you still think that if people have a D next to their name that they're looking out for you? You'd have to be incredibly naive at this point to believe that. People like Joe Manchin and Glenn Moore, they're not on your side. And for Manchin, he's basically a Republican. And so are a lot of the rest of the corporate Democrats, who are more than willing to sell you out if it means a paycheck. Look, that's why primaries are so important. We got to vote these people out. We got to challenge them from the left. We got to come after them, or else nothing is going to change. Okay. All right. Got another story here for you guys. I think we'll save Joanne Reed for tomorrow. We'll end out with a good story. Okay. A Flint resident is being recognized for her pivotal role in helping spread awareness of the Flint's contaminated water crisis. Now, according to Business Insider, Leanne Walters is now the winner of the Goldman Environmental Prize. Now, what does this mean? She is one of 6 people around the world chosen for their grassroots environmental activism and has been awarded a cash prize of $200,000. Now, that's amazing, right? So let me tell you about why she is being recognized and why this is an amazing thing. Now, her story starts when her and her children began getting sick from drinking contaminated water. Now, she and her oldest daughter began experiencing hair loss, strange hair loss. They couldn't explain it. And her 3-year-old twins began breaking into strange rashes in which the doctors could not explain the presence of. Not only that, but her teenage son began suffering from blurry vision and an enlarged kidney. So all of these different things didn't make sense to the family. Like, what's going on? Why are my children getting sick? Why am I losing my hair? What the hell is going on? It wasn't until their water started turning brown that they put everything together and decided to investigate what was going on with her water. So what she did is that she basically first began investigating what lead poisoning does to the body, and then putting all these different things together. Now, that led to her getting tested, her home getting tested for lead. After conducting her own testing, she found that the lead levels in her home, the water that her children had been drinking, that she had been drinking, was actually worse than hazardous waste. It was classified as hazardous waste. That's insane. Though that's how bad the lead levels were. Now, once she got that tested, once she found out the truth, she began to ask other people in the neighborhood. She's like, hey, are you getting these symptoms? What's going on with your water? Is it coming out brown? What's going on? Let's get your water tested as well. So pretty soon, she was able to get together with her neighbors, test all their water, and then bringing it to Virginia Tech professor Mark Edwards to start not just testing in their individual homes or communities, but trying to test the entire city for elevated lead levels in the water. In fact, Walters remembered thinking at the time, here's a professor, he's willing to get us test kits. If we're willing to bust our asses and get this done and prove that this is city-wide. So, and what did she do? She put in the legwork, her and the community, and they got all of these all these homes tested, which went and disproved some of the official tests done by the city and showed that there was there was a real problem with the water in Flint. So she was absolutely instrumental in exposing the Flint water crisis and, of course, the cover-ups by state officials, of which there have been arrests and convictions on so far, and hopefully more to come. Now, together, Walters and her neighbors and the Virginia Tech team collected more than 800 independent water samples from homes around Flint, and of course, those kits helped prove that there was a citywide problem. Now, since helping to find out the truth about Flint, Walters has decided that this is not enough. It's not just a Flint problem, she said. It's actually a problem all across the United States, and what she's doing now is gearing up to be able to independently test all these different water sources around the country, which is amazing. Now, she believes that there are too many loopholes allowed in how cities test their water to make sure that it's actually drinkable. She also wants to change the way that the U.S. and EPA writes its lead and copper rule so that cities can't skirt testing by essentially messing with the water that comes out of the tap, as what happened in Flint. Look, here's what some of the testers would do. They would basically flush the taps, for one. They would tell residents, okay, let your water run for about 2-3 minutes, which would decrease lead levels. Not only that, but they would test homes that were very unlikely to be affected. These are homes with brand new pipes. And so that would also have an impact on what the tests had actually said. So, look, she wants to go and do independent tests because, just like Flint, there are corrupt city officials that would love to cover up the problem of lead levels in the water. So I think that's absolutely amazing, an amazing goal, and it's just amazing that what she's been doing. So I love this story. Again, here's somebody who was personally affected and taking the energy that she, got from finding out that this had happened and turning that into positive action and turning that into a way to help other people. And I absolutely love that. So she is out there trying to make sure that everybody else has access to clean water as well. So it's wonderful to see her recognized for that work and for the amazing work that she is continuing to do. So hats off to her. She is a real American hero. Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the Joyanne Reed story tomorrow because that's a long story. It's a fantastic story. So that's what we're going to do. Before we go, I want to give some shout-outs to people donating on the Super Chat. Again, what do you mean? Well, she gives some money for the Super Chat, so that helps out the show a lot. So thank you, What Do You Mean? And thank you, Kimberly, for helping out the show. If you want to become a member of the show and support us, you can go to patreon.com/TYTNation. I'll do some extra content per your request. Whatever, what you want to see, you can suggest topics for me to talk about and things like that. So, all right. I know we're ending just a little bit early, but I've got some things that I got to take care of. So I'm going to get to that. Thank you guys. Love you. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Same time, same place, same channel. I'm outie.